The kibble scattered across the kitchen floor like tiny brown pebbles, rolling under the refrigerator as Max's bowl clattered against the tile. I watched in stunned silence as my golden retriever's legs buckled beneath him, his 70-pound frame hitting the ground with a sickening thud that echoed through my small kitchen. Max! My voice came out as barely a whisper, disbelief coating each syllable. He'd been fine 30 seconds ago, tail wagging as he devoured his dinner with the enthusiasm of a dog who'd never missed a meal in his 3 years of life. Now, he lay on his side, his beautiful amber eyes rolling back, thick strings of drool pooling beneath his muzzle. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I dropped to my knees beside him, my hands shaking as I touched his heaving chest. His breathing was wrong. Too shallow, too fast, like he was suffocating from the inside out. "Max, baby, what's happening?" I pressed my ear to his chest, listening to his heart hammering against his ribs in an irregular rhythm that sent ice through my veins. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. Dogs didn't just collapse after eating. Not healthy dogs. Not dogs who'd been playing fetch in the backyard 20 minutes earlier. My hands moved frantically over his body, searching for something, anything that might explain this. No wounds, no swelling, no signs of choking. But his pupils were dilated, fixed points of black that didn't respond when I waved my hand in front of his face. His limbs were twitching now, subtle spasms that made my stomach lurch. Okay, I whispered, more to myself than to him. "We're gonna fix this." I scooped him into my arms, grunting under his dead weight. 3 years ago, when I had first brought him home from the shelter, I never could have lifted him like this. But grief and divorce had a way of making you stronger, even when you felt like you were falling apart. Max had been my anchor through the worst period of my life, the warm body beside me on countless sleepless nights when the house felt too quiet and too empty. The shelter volunteers had warned me he might have behavioral issues. Most rescues did. "He was found abandoned in a park," she said, her voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "No collar, no chip. Someone just left him there." But Max had never shown aggression, never destroyed furniture or had accidents. He'd simply attached himself to me with the devotion of a creature who understood abandonment and was determined never to experience it again. Now, as I stumbled toward my car with his limp body in my arms, that memory felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I promised him safety. I promised him forever. My neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, was watering her roses, and she looked up as I burst through my front door. "Denise, is everything— Oh my God, what happened?" "I don't know," I called back, my voice cracking. "He just collapsed. I have to get him to the vet." I fumbled with my car keys, my hands shaking so violently that I couldn't fit the key into the lock. Max's breathing became even more irregular. I lifted him again, his body feeling heavier somehow, more lifeless than before. The automatic doors of the emergency clinic opened with a mechanical whoosh, and suddenly we were surrounded by the harsh fluorescent lighting and antiseptic smell of medical urgency. This couldn't be happening. Not to Max, not to the dog who saved me from drowning in my own loneliness, who gave me purpose when my world fell apart. Not to the gentle creature who'd never hurt anything larger than a squeaky toy. But as I stood there in that sterile waiting area, watching strangers and scrubs rush toward us, I knew with horrible certainty that everything was about to change. "We need to take him back immediately," a young veterinary technician said, appearing beside me with a wheeled gurney. Her scrubs were decorated with tiny cartoon cats, a cheerful detail that felt absurdly out of place in this moment of crisis. I hesitated, my arms tightening around Max instinctively. "Can I come with him?" She said gently but firmly, "We need space to work. I promise we'll take excellent care of him." Watching them wheel him away through a set of swinging doors felt like watching my heart being carried off on a metal table. The waiting room suddenly seemed enormous and oppressively quiet, filled with other pet owners sitting in plastic chairs with their own anxious expressions and pet carriers. A woman in the corner held a cat carrier on her lap, whispering soft reassurances to whatever was inside. An elderly man sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, staring at the doors where his companion had disappeared. I sank into a chair by the window, my legs finally giving out. The adrenaline that had carried me here was fading, leaving behind a hollow, shaking awareness of how helpless I felt. Through the glass, I could see the parking lot, where families were going about their normal evening routines. Parents loading groceries, children playing on the sidewalk, the ordinary world continuing as if mine hadn't just tilted off its axis. "Ms. Carter," a voice interrupted my spiraling thoughts. I looked up to see a woman in her 40s approaching, her kind face framed by graying brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her name tag read, Dr. Sarah Lawson, DVM. "I'm the emergency veterinarian treating Max." I stood quickly, searching her expression for any hint of what was coming. "How is he? Is he going to be okay?" "He's stable for now. We've got him on IV fluids, and we're monitoring his vital signs." She gestured toward a quieter corner of the waiting room. "Would you like to sit down? I have some questions about what happened tonight." We settled into 2 chairs facing each other, and Dr. Lawson pulled out a tablet. Her demeanor was calm and methodical, the kind of professional composure that probably comforted most pet owners. Right now, it only made me more anxious. "Can you walk me through exactly what happened this evening?" He was eating dinner around 6:30, same as always. Same food he's had for months, nothing new or different. Then he just collapsed. My voice caught on the word. His legs gave out, he started drooling heavily, and his breathing became really labored. Dr. Lawson made notes on her tablet. "Any changes in behavior earlier today? Loss of appetite, lethargy, anything unusual?" "No, nothing. He was perfectly normal. We went for a walk this afternoon, he played fetch in the backyard, ate his lunch without any problems." I paused, trying to think of anything I might have missed. Actually, he seemed extra playful today, more energetic than usual. Has he gotten into anything he shouldn't have? Chocolate, grapes, any household chemicals or medications? I shook my head emphatically. "No, I'm really careful about that stuff. I don't even keep anything dangerous where he could reach it. And he's never been a dog who gets into things. He's very well behaved." "Has there been any recent changes to his environment? New food, treats, toys, any construction or pest control work in your home?" "Nothing." The questions were making me feel defensive, as if I were being accused of neglecting him somehow. "I swear, Dr. Lawson, there's nothing in my house that could have done this to him." She looked up from her tablet, and something in her expression made my stomach clench. "Ms. Carter, I've run some preliminary blood work, and I'm seeing some concerning results. Max's symptoms, the sudden onset, the neurological signs, the respiratory distress, they're consistent with toxin ingestion." The word toxin hit me like a physical blow. "But I told you, he couldn't have gotten into anything." "I believe you, which is why I've ordered a comprehensive toxicology screen. We should have results within a few hours." She leaned forward slightly, her voice gentle but serious. "Ms. Carter, I need you to think very carefully about everyone who had access to your home today. Anyone who might have been alone with Max, even briefly." My mind went blank for a moment, then started racing. "My mother was there this afternoon, and my sister Claire. We had coffee around 3 o'clock. The memory felt surreal now. We'd sat in my living room, making small talk while Max dozed at my feet. But they would never. Why would anyone want to hurt Max?" Dr. Lawson's expression remained neutral, but I caught something in her eyes, a flicker of concern that made my blood run cold. "We'll know more once the toxicology results come back." For now, Max is receiving supportive care, and we're doing everything we can to help his body process whatever he ingested. Can I see him? He's sedated right now, but you're welcome to sit with him for a few minutes. She led me through the swinging doors into a treatment area that smelled of disinfectant and echoed with the quiet beeping of monitors. Max lay on a padded table in a small room, looking tiny despite his size. IV lines ran into his front leg, and a monitor displayed his vital signs in glowing green numbers that meant nothing to me except that they were still there, still changing, proof that his heart was still beating. I reached out and gently stroked his head, my fingers finding the soft spot behind his ears that always made him lean into my touch. Today, there was no response.
"Max," I whispered, "I'm here, baby. Whatever happened, we're going to figure it out." But even as I said the words, a terrible suspicion was beginning to form in the back of my mind. A possibility so awful, I couldn't quite let myself think it directly. At 11:30 that night, Dr. Lawson found me in the waiting room where I'd been staring at my untouched coffee for the past 2 hours. Her expression was different now, more serious, more troubled than the professional concern she'd shown earlier. "Miss Carter, we need to talk about Max's toxicology results." I followed her into a small consultation room, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. She closed the door and sat across from me, the tablet in her hands seeming to weigh more than it should. "We found traces of carbofuran in Max's system," she said without preamble. "It's a highly toxic carbamate pesticide that's been restricted for residential use since 2009. The name meant nothing to me, but the gravity in her voice made my chest tighten. "I don't understand. What does that mean?" "It means Max was deliberately poisoned." The words dropped into the small room like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that I could feel spreading through my body. Carbofuran isn't something you accidentally encounter. It's not sold in regular stores, and it's not used in standard pest control anymore because of how dangerous it is. I stared at her, my brain struggling to process what she was saying. "Deliberately? Are you saying someone gave this to him on purpose?" The concentration in his blood, the timing of the symptoms, the fact that he ingested it recently? Yes, someone fed this to Max intentionally. Dr. Lawson leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Miss Carter, I've been a veterinarian for 15 years, and I've seen accidental poisonings many times. This isn't that. This was calculated." The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the arms of my chair. "But why would anyone want to hurt Max?" "That's not for me to determine, but I am required by law to report suspected cases of deliberate animal cruelty to the authorities. I've already contacted the police. They'll want to speak with you about everyone who had access to Max today." My sister's face flashed in my mind. Claire, sitting on my couch that afternoon, making jokes about how spoiled Max was, how I treated him better than most people treated their children. "You care more about that dog than your own family," she'd said with that familiar edge to her voice, the one that always made me feel like I was doing something wrong just by existing. "Miss Carter, are you all right?" I realized I'd been silent for too long, lost in the horrible realization that was crystallizing in my mind. "My sister was at my house today. She's never liked Max. Says I spoil him too much." The words felt like betrayal, even as I spoke them. But they were true. Claire had never hidden her resentment of the attention I gave my dog. "Has she ever made threats against Max? Even joking ones?" I thought back to all the comments over the years, the subtle digs about my priorities, the way she rolled her eyes when I talked about Max's health or training or the little things that brought him joy. She calls him the replacement child sometimes, says I use him as a substitute for having a real family. Dr. Lawson made notes on her tablet. "The police will want to hear about this. In the meantime, Max is going to need continued monitoring. The good news is that we caught it early enough. If someone had waited even a few more hours to bring him in, we might not have been able to save him. The weight of how close I'd come to losing him hit me like a physical blow. Is he going to recover fully? It's too early to say definitively, but his vital signs are stabilizing. Carbofurin can cause permanent neurological damage in severe cases, but Max was lucky. The dose wasn't quite high enough to be fatal, though that may have been more about miscalculation than mercy. Miscalculation. The word suggested planning, measurement, deliberate action. Someone had decided how much poison would hurt Max without killing him outright. The cruelty of it took my breath away. I keep thinking there has to be some other explanation. Maybe someone made a mistake, or maybe the test is wrong, or... Miss Carter. Dr. Lawson's voice was kind but firm. I know this is difficult to accept, but carbofurin doesn't accidentally end up in a dog's system. Someone with access to restricted chemicals deliberately gave this to Max. The police will investigate, but you need to think about who might have wanted to hurt him, or hurt you by hurting him. The truth crystallized in that moment with horrible clarity. This wasn't about Max at all. Max was just the weapon someone had chosen to use against me. Sweet, innocent Max, who'd never harmed anything in his life, had become collateral damage in someone else's twisted need to cause me pain. Can I see him again? Of course.
Max looked smaller under the harsh treatment room lights, but his breathing was steadier now, more regular. I placed my hand on his chest and felt the strong, steady beat of his heart. I'm so sorry, I whispered to him. I'm so sorry someone hurt you to get to me. But even as I said it, a different emotion was building beneath the grief and shock. Anger. Cold, clean anger at whoever had done this to an innocent animal just to make me suffer. Max had saved me when my world fell apart, had given me purpose and unconditional love when I felt worthless and discarded. Now, someone had tried to take that away from me, and they used poison to do it. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over Claire's contact. Part of me wanted to call her, to give her a chance to explain, to tell me I was wrong about what I was starting to suspect. But Dr. Lawson's words echoed in my head. Carbofurin doesn't accidentally end up in a dog's system. Instead, I scrolled to my mother's number. If Claire had done this, Mom would know something. She always knew when Claire was upset, always made excuses for her behavior, always found ways to smooth things over. But as I stared at the phone, I realized I wasn't ready for the conversation I was about to have. Because if my suspicions were right, this wasn't just about Max. This was about everything I'd spent years trying to ignore about my family. The jealousy, the manipulation, the toxic dynamics I'd pretended were normal. Max stirred slightly under my hand, and I made him a promise. Whatever happened here, whoever did this to you, they're not going to get away with it. My mother's house sat at the end of Maple Street like a monument to suburban perfection. Its pristine white shutters and manicured lawn, a testament to Janet Carter's lifelong obsession with appearances. Even at midnight, the porch light cast a warm, welcoming glow that had fooled neighbors for decades into thinking this was a happy home. Claire's silver Honda was parked in the driveway next to Mom's sedan. I sat in my car for a full minute, engine running, staring at those two vehicles and feeling the weight of what I was about to do. The toxicology report felt heavy in my jacket pocket, Dr. Lawson's words echoing in my head. Carbofurin doesn't accidentally end up in a dog's system. My hands were shaking as I turned off the engine. Not from fear, from rage so pure and cold it felt like breathing ice. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in her powder blue bathrobe, her silver hair perfectly set despite the late hour, her face arranged in that familiar expression of worried disapproval. "Denise, sweetheart, what are you doing here so late? Is everything all right?" Behind her, I could see Claire sitting on the living room couch, still fully dressed, a glass of wine in her hand.
She looked up when she heard my voice, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "We need to talk," I said, pushing past Mom into the house. The living room looked exactly as it always did. Cream-colored furniture arranged with mathematical precision, family photos strategically placed to suggest harmony, fresh flowers on the coffee table that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries. Claire set down her wine glass with deliberate care. "Well, hello to you too, little sister. How's the precious pooch?" The casual cruelty in her voice hit me like a slap. He's fighting for his life. "Oh, Denise." Mom closed the door and hurried over, her voice dropping into that soothing tone she used when she thought I was being dramatic. "I'm sure Max is fine. Dogs get sick sometimes. It's not the end of the world. He was poisoned." The words dropped into the room like a grenade with the pin pulled. Claire's hand froze halfway to her wine glass and Mom's face went pale. "Poisoned?" Mom's voice rose an octave. "That's ridiculous! How could Max be poisoned?" I kept my eyes on Claire, watching her face carefully. "Someone fed him carbofuran. It's a restricted pesticide, the kind you can't just buy at Home Depot." Claire's composure cracked just slightly. A muscle in her jaw twitched, and she looked away from me for the first time since I'd walked in. "Claire!" I stepped closer to the couch, my voice deadly quiet. "Do you have something you want to tell me?" "I have no idea what you're talking about." But her voice had lost its casual confidence. She reached for her wine again, and I noticed her hand was trembling slightly. "The police are involved now," I continued, watching her reaction. "Dr. Lawson had to report it because deliberate animal poisoning is a felony. They're going to investigate everyone who had access to Max today." That got a reaction. Claire's face flushed, and she stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her wine glass. "This is insane! You're accusing me of trying to kill your dog?"
Did I say I was accusing you of anything? Mom positioned herself between us, her hands raised like a referee. "Stop it, both of you. Denise, you're upset and not thinking clearly. Claire would never hurt an animal." "Wouldn't she?" I looked between them, seeing the family dynamic I'd been blind to for years playing out in real time. Mom immediately rushing to Claire's defense, Claire hiding behind that protection like she always did when consequences came knocking. "Tell me, Claire," I said, ignoring Mom entirely. "What exactly did you mean this afternoon when you said Max was getting too spoiled for his own good?" Claire's mask slipped completely then. "Oh, for Christ's sake. I gave him something to calm him down. He was being hyperactive and annoying, jumping all over everything. I just wanted him to relax." The admission hit me like a physical blow. "You gave him something? What did you give him?" "Just a little something I had in my purse. It wasn't supposed to hurt him." Claire's voice was getting higher, more defensive. "You treat that dog like a human child, Denise. Someone needs to teach you some perspective." "What did you give him?" Each word came out like a bullet. Claire looked at Mom, then back at me, her face cycling through defiance and fear. "It was just a small amount of something I use for pest control at work. I thought it would just make him sleepy for a few hours." The room went completely silent, except for the ticking of Mom's antique grandfather clock. I stared at my sister, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. A woman who worked for an agricultural supply company who had access to industrial chemicals, who had poisoned my dog and tried to play it off as a favor. "You could have killed him," my voice was barely a whisper. "But I didn't," Claire snapped, her defensiveness turning to anger. "He's fine, isn't he?" "He's not fine. He almost died. He's hooked up to machines right now because you decided to drug him without my consent." Mom stepped forward, her voice taking on that familiar commanding tone she used when she wanted to shut down conflict. "Denise, lower your voice. Claire made a mistake, but Max is going to be okay. There's no need to involve the police in a family matter." I turned to stare at her.
This woman who had raised me, who had taught me that keeping up appearances was more important than truth, that family loyalty meant covering up cruelty. A family matter, I repeated. Mom, Claire poisoned my dog with an illegal substance. This isn't a family matter, it's a crime. It was an accident, Mom insisted, but I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. Claire didn't mean any harm. She just admitted she deliberately gave him a pesticide to calm him down. I looked back at Claire, who was now pacing behind the couch like a caged animal. How was that an accident? Because I didn't know it would make him that sick. I thought it would just make him sleepy for a few hours. I was trying to do you a favor, to show you what it's like when he's not bouncing off the walls every second. The twisted logic of her justification left me speechless for a moment. She had poisoned Max to prove a point about my parenting choices. She had nearly killed the most innocent creature in my life because she was jealous of the love I gave him. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of Mom's house. Get away from me. If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I'm calling the police right now. Claire looked at Mom for support, but for once, our another seemed at a loss for words. The perfect family facade was crumbling, and she didn't know how to patch it back together. Denise, please, Mom tried one more time. Think about what this will do to the family. Think about Claire's job, her future. Do you really want to destroy your sister's life over this? I looked at them both. My mother, still trying to manipulate me into silence, and my sister, still refusing to take responsibility for what she had done. In that moment, I saw them clearly, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. Claire destroyed her own life when she decided to poison my dog, and you're destroying yours by trying to cover it up. I pulled out my phone, my hand steady now, my voice clear and calm when the dispatcher answered. I need to report an attempted animal poisoning. My sister deliberately gave my dog a restricted pesticide, and I have the toxicology report to prove it. The silence that followed my 911 call was deafening. Claire stood frozen behind the couch, her face cycling through shock, rage, and something that might have been fear. Mom sank into her favorite armchair, her perfectly composed facade finally cracking.
Ma'am, can you provide your location? The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional through the phone speaker. 124 Maple Street, I said, my eyes never leaving Claire's face. My sister is here now, and I have the veterinary toxicology report proving she poisoned my dog with carbofuran. Denise, hang up that phone right now. Mom's voice had shifted from pleading to commanding, the tone she'd used when we were children, and she wanted immediate compliance. I looked at her, this woman who had spent my entire life teaching me that peace was more important than justice, that family reputation mattered more than truth. No. Officers are being dispatched to your location, the dispatcher continued. Are you in any immediate danger? I glanced at Claire, who was now gripping the back of the couch so hard her knuckles had gone white. I don't think so, but my sister is the one who committed the crime. Denise! Mom shot to her feet, her composure completely gone now. How dare you do this to your own family? My family? The words tasted bitter. My family wouldn't poison an innocent animal. My family wouldn't try to cover up a felony. Claire finally found her voice. You're making a huge mistake. You think you're so righteous, but you're about to ruin everything for a fucking dog. Language, Claire, Mom snapped automatically, then immediately looked horrified that she'd chosen that moment to worry about propriety. His name is Max, and he almost died because you decided to teach me a lesson about my priorities. My phone was buzzing with text messages. I glanced down to see a string of notifications from Mom's number. Even though she was standing right in front of me, she must have been texting me while I was talking to 911. Please don't do this to our family. Think about Claire's children. We can work this out privately. You're being vindictive. This will destroy us. I held up the phone so she could see her own messages on the screen. Really, Mom? You're going to try to guilt trip me while I'm on the phone with 911? She had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. I'm trying to protect this family.
You're trying to protect Claire from the consequences of her actions, just like you always do." The truth of that statement hung in the air between us. How many times had I watched this exact dynamic play out? Claire would do something cruel or destructive, Mom would make excuses and smooth things over, and I would be expected to just accept it in the name of family harmony. When we were teenagers, Claire destroyed my prom dress 2 days before the dance because she was jealous that I'd been asked, and she hadn't. Mom had made me apologize to Claire for making her feel bad and then bought me a cheaper replacement dress with money from my college fund. When Claire got fired from her job for screaming at a customer, Mom had called everyone in our extended family to ask them to put in a good word for her somewhere else, spinning the story to make it sound like Claire had been unfairly treated. When Claire's marriage fell apart because she'd been having an affair, Mom watched her grandchildren every weekend for 6 months so Claire could find herself, all while lecturing me about being more understanding of my sister's difficult time. "Ma'am, are you still there?" The dispatcher's voice brought me back to the present. "Yes, I'm here. The police can reach me at this number when they arrive." I hung up and looked at my mother and sister, really seeing them for what they were. Mom, desperate to maintain the illusion of a perfect family, even if it meant enabling abuse. Claire, so consumed by jealousy and entitlement that she would poison an innocent animal to make a point. "You have no idea what you've just done," Claire said, her voice shaking with rage. "This is going to be on the news. Everyone's going to know. My kids are going to see their mother arrested because you couldn't keep your mouth shut about a dog. Your kids are going to see their mother arrested because you committed a felony." I corrected. "Don't try to make this about my choices. You poisoned Max. You used a restricted chemical to deliberately hurt an animal. Those are your choices, not mine." Claire's mask of victimhood slipped completely then, revealing the raw fury underneath. "He's just a fucking animal, Denise. You treat him better than you treat your own family. Because he deserves better treatment than this family gives anyone." The sound of sirens was growing closer, wailing through the quiet suburban streets. Through Mom's front window, I could see the red and blue lights reflecting off the neighbors' houses. "Oh God, the neighbors are going to see," Mom moaned, peeking through the curtains. "What am I going to tell people?"
Try the truth for once, I suggested. 2 police officers approached the front door, their flashlights cutting through the porch light's warm glow. The doorbell rang, and Mom looked at me pleadingly one last time. "It's not too late to change your mind. You could tell them it was a misunderstanding." I walked to the front door and opened it. "Officers, I'm Denise Carter. I called about the animal poisoning." The older officer, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, stepped forward. "Miss Carter, I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Chen. You reported that your dog was deliberately poisoned?" "That's correct. I have the veterinary toxicology report with me." I pulled the folded papers from my jacket pocket. "My sister Claire admitted to giving him carbofuran to make him calm down." Officer Martinez took the report and scanned it quickly. "Ma'am, this is a restricted substance. Where did your sister obtain it?" "She works for an agricultural supply company. She had access through her job." Behind me, I could hear Mom trying to coach Claire in a loud whisper. "Don't say anything without a lawyer. Just keep quiet." Officer Chen stepped around me to address Claire directly. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to speak with you about the allegations." As the officers began their questioning, my phone buzzed with another text message. This time, it wasn't from Mom. It was from my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister. "Your mother called me crying. How could you do this to Claire over a dog? Family is supposed to stick together." I stared at the message, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. They would never understand. They would never see Max as anything more than just a dog, or acknowledge that poisoning him was anything more than a mistake that should be handled privately. I thought about Max lying unconscious on that veterinary table, his body fighting to process the poison my own sister had fed him. I thought about the choice she'd made to hurt him just to hurt me, and the choice Mom was making right now to protect her from consequences. For the first time in my life, I was choosing something different. I was choosing truth over peace, justice over family loyalty. I was choosing Max. 3 days after Claire's arrest, I was sitting in the veterinary clinic with Max, who was finally alert enough to lift his head and wag his tail weakly, when Dr. Lawson approached with a man I'd never seen before. "Miss Carter?" This is Agent Torres from the DEA. He'd like to speak with you about your sister's case. Agent Torres was younger than I'd expected for a federal agent, maybe early 40s, with sharp, brown eyes and the kind of focused attention that made me sit up straighter automatically. He wore a simple gray suit and carried a leather portfolio that looked well used. Ms. Carter, thank you for making time to speak with me. I know this has been a difficult few days. His voice was calm, but authoritative, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. I'm here because your sister's case has taken an interesting turn. A turn? I kept one hand on Max's head, drawing comfort from his warm, solid presence. Agent Torres opened his portfolio and pulled out several documents. When the local police investigated your sister's workplace to determine how she obtained the carbofuran, they found some irregularities in the company's chemical inventory. Dr. Lawson pulled up a chair beside me. Agent Torres, can you explain what this means for Max's case? It means this isn't just a simple case of animal cruelty anymore. Torres spread several photographs across the small table. They showed industrial chemical containers, spreadsheets, and what looked like shipping manifests. Your sister's employer, Hartley Agricultural Supply, has been under investigation for 6 months for illegally distributing restricted pesticides to unlicensed buyers. My brain struggled to process what he was telling me. Are you saying Claire is involved in some kind of conspiracy? We don't think she was part of the main operation, Torres clarified. But her access to the chemicals and her willingness to use them for personal reasons has opened up a federal case. Carbofuran isn't just restricted, it's been linked to at least 12 other animal poisoning cases across 3 states over the past year. The room felt like it was tilting. 12 other cases? Dogs, cats, even some livestock. We've been trying to trace the source of the illegal carbofuran distribution for months. Your sister's arrest gave us the break we needed. Torres pulled out another document. When we searched her home with a warrant, we found a small quantity of carbofuran in her garage, along with documentation showing she'd taken it from her workplace on multiple occasions.
Try the truth for once, I suggested. 2 police officers approached the front door, their flashlights cutting through the porch light's warm glow. The doorbell rang, and Mom looked at me pleadingly one last time. It's not too late to change your mind. You could tell them it was a misunderstanding. I walked to the front door and opened it. Officers, I'm Denise Carter. I called about the animal poisoning. The older officer, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, stepped forward. Miss Carter, I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Chen. You reported that your dog was deliberately poisoned? That's correct. I have the veterinary toxicology report with me. I pulled the folded papers from my jacket pocket. My sister Claire admitted to giving him carbofuran to make him calm down. Officer Martinez took the report and scanned it quickly. Ma'am, this is a restricted substance. Where did your sister obtain it? She works for an agricultural supply company. She had access through her job. Behind me, I could hear Mom trying to coach Claire in a loud whisper. Don't say anything without a lawyer. Just keep quiet. Officer Chen stepped around me to address Claire directly. Ma'am, I'm going to need to speak with you about the allegations. As the officers began their questioning, my phone buzzed with another text message. This time, it wasn't from Mom. It was from my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister. Your mother called me crying. How could you do this to Claire over a dog? Family is supposed to stick together. I stared at the message, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. They would never understand. They would never see Max as anything more than just a dog, or acknowledge that poisoning him was anything more than a mistake that should be handled privately. I thought about Max lying unconscious on that veterinary table, his body fighting to process the poison my own sister had fed him. I thought about the choice she'd made to hurt him just to hurt me, and the choice Mom was making right now to protect her from consequences. For the first time in my life, I was choosing something different. I was choosing truth over peace, justice over family loyalty. I was choosing Max. 3 days after Claire's arrest, I was sitting in the veterinary clinic with Max, who was finally alert enough to lift his head and wag his tail weakly, when Dr. Lawson approached with a man I'd never seen before. Miss Carter, this is Agent Torres from the DEA. He'd like to speak with you about your sister's case.
Agent Taurus was younger than I'd expected for a federal agent, maybe early 40s, with sharp, brown eyes and the kind of focused attention that made me sit up straighter automatically. He wore a simple gray suit and carried a leather portfolio that looked well used. "Ms. Carter, thank you for making time to speak with me. I know this has been a difficult few days." His voice was calm, but authoritative, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. "I'm here because your sister's case has taken an interesting turn." A turn? I kept one hand on Max's head, drawing comfort from his warm, solid presence. Agent Taurus opened his portfolio and pulled out several documents. "When the local police investigated your sister's workplace to determine how she obtained the carbofuran, they found some irregularities in the company's chemical inventory." Dr. Lawson pulled up a chair beside me. "Agent Taurus, can you explain what this means for Max's case?" "It means this isn't just a simple case of animal cruelty anymore." Taurus spread several photographs across the small table. They showed industrial chemical containers, spreadsheets, and what looked like shipping manifests. "Your sister's employer, Hartley Agricultural Supply, has been under investigation for 6 months for illegally distributing restricted pesticides to unlicensed buyers." My brain struggled to process what he was telling me. "Are you saying Claire is involved in some kind of conspiracy?" "We don't think she was part of the main operation," Taurus clarified. "But her access to the chemicals and her willingness to use them for personal reasons has opened up a federal case. Carbofuran isn't just restricted, it's been linked to at least 12 other animal poisoning cases across 3 states over the past year." The room felt like it was tilting. 12 other cases? Dogs, cats, even some livestock. We've been trying to trace the source of the illegal carbofuran distribution for months. Your sister's arrest gave us the break we needed. Taurus pulled out another document. "When we searched her home with a warrant, we found a small quantity of carbofuran in her garage, along with documentation showing she'd taken it from her workplace on multiple occasions." Dr. Lawson leaned forward. "Multiple occasions? You mean she's done this before?" "We don't have evidence that she's poisoned other animals, but the theft of restricted chemicals from her workplace appears to be ongoing. That makes this a federal crime under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act." I stared at the photographs, trying to reconcile the sister I'd grown up with, jealous and spiteful, yes, but not criminal, with someone who had apparently been stealing dangerous chemicals for months. "What does this mean for Claire?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know. "It means she's looking at federal charges in addition to the local animal cruelty charges. Unauthorized distribution of restricted pesticides carries a penalty of up to 5 years in federal prison and substantial fines." 5 years! The number hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything Claire had done, despite the poison and the lies and the complete lack of remorse, she was still my sister. The little girl who used to build blanket forts with me, who cried when our goldfish died, who taught me how to braid my hair. "Miss Carter?" Agent Taurus was studying my face. "I know this is overwhelming, but I need you to understand that your willingness to report this crime may have prevented other animals from being hurt. The carbofuran your sister used was part of a larger batch that we believe was destined for illegal sale." "I just wanted Max to be okay," I whispered. "And he is okay, thanks to you." Taurus gathered his papers. "Your sister's actions gave us the evidence we needed to shut down a significant illegal operation. Hartley Agricultural is being investigated, their distribution license has been suspended, and we've recovered enough illegal pesticides to kill hundreds of animals." Max stirred under my hand, making a soft huffing sound that might have been contentment. 3 days ago, he'd been unconscious and fighting for his life. Now he was sitting up, drinking water, and showing interest in food again. Dr. Lawson said he'd probably make a full recovery. "There's one more thing," Taurus added. "Your family has been contacting federal prosecutors trying to negotiate some kind of plea deal that would keep this quiet." I wasn't surprised. "My mother?" "Your mother, several aunts and uncles, even your sister's ex-husband. They're all claiming this was a family dispute that got out of hand, that your sister didn't understand the seriousness of what she was doing." Taurus closed his portfolio. I want you to know that these kinds of pressure tactics are common in cases involving family members. Federal prosecutors won't be swayed by them, but they might try to pressure you to change your testimony. The idea of facing down my entire extended family, all of them united in their determination to minimize what Claire had done, made me feel exhausted. They've already started. Text messages, voicemails, even a few showing up at my house. Have any of them threatened you? Not directly, but my uncle called me vindictive and cruel for destroying Claire's life. My cousin said I was choosing a dog over family. My Aunt Linda sent me a long email about forgiveness and Christian values. Dr. Lawson made a disgusted sound. I've seen this before. Families will protect abusers and blame victims even when the victim is an animal who can't defend themselves. Taurus nodded. Ms. Carter, I want you to know that you can request protection if you feel unsafe, and regardless of what your family says or does, the federal case against your sister will proceed. The evidence is solid, and there are larger issues at stake than family dynamics. I looked down at Max, whose golden eyes were finally clear and alert, focused on my face with the kind of unconditional trust that had made me fall in love with him in the first place. He had never asked me to choose between him and anyone else. He had simply loved me, completely and without reservation, and trusted me to protect him. I'd failed to protect him from Claire's initial attack, but I wouldn't fail him now. Dr. Torres, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, what do you need from me? Your continued cooperation, testimony at trial if it comes to that, and your willingness to stand firm against family pressure to drop the charges or change your story. The charges can't be dropped now anyway, can they? This is federal. That's correct. Once federal charges are filed, it's out of your hands. But families sometimes convince victims to recant their testimony or claim they were mistaken about what happened. I thought about Claire's face when she admitted to poisoning Max, the casual cruelty in her voice when she'd called him just a fucking animal. I thought about Mom's immediate instinct to protect Claire and silence me. I thought about all the relatives who were more concerned about family reputation than justice for an innocent victim. I won't recant, I said firmly. I won't change my story, and I won't pretend this was anything other than what it was, a deliberate act of cruelty that could have killed my dog. Agent Torres smiled for the first time since I'd met him. Good. Your sister made her choices, Miss Carter. Now she gets to live with them.
As he left, I remained in the small examination room with Max, scratching behind his ears and feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, the absolute certainty that I was doing the right thing, no matter who disapproved. For the first time in my life, I was putting love before family loyalty, and it felt like freedom. I was at the veterinary clinic with Max when my phone started buzzing with frantic calls from unknown numbers. The first voicemail was from my Aunt Linda. "Denise, there are FBI agents at your mother's house. What have you done?" Dr. Lawson looked up from Max's chart as I listened to the message, my hand automatically moving to stroke his head. He was sitting up now, his appetite returning, though he still tired easily. "Federal agents?" she asked. My phone rang again, this time Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail, but the caller immediately tried again, and again. "I should probably take this," I said, reluctantly answering on the fourth ring. "Denise!" Mom's voice was shrill with panic. "You need to get over here right now. There are federal agents with a warrant, and they're saying they're here to arrest Claire. You need to call this off." "I can't call off federal charges, Mom." "Yes, you can. You can tell them you made a mistake, that you were emotional and not thinking clearly." Her voice was getting higher, more desperate. "Please, Denise, they're going to put her in handcuffs." Through the phone, I could hear voices in the background, official, authoritative tones mixed with Claire's increasingly hysterical protests. "This is insane. I'm not going anywhere with you people." "Mom, where are you right now?" "I'm in the kitchen. They won't let me go in the living room where Claire is." "Denise, please, you have to stop this." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of what was happening. "I'll be right there." Dr. Lawson looked concerned. "Are you sure that's a good idea?"
This sounds like it could get volatile. She was probably right, but I needed to see this through. Can you keep Max here for another few hours? Of course, but Denise, be careful. The drive to Mom's house took 12 minutes, but I could see the flashing lights from 3 blocks away. 2 police cruisers, an unmarked federal vehicle, and what looked like a forensics van were parked along Maple Street. Neighbors had come out of their houses, clustering in small groups on their lawns and whispering to each other. Mrs. Henderson from next door spotted me getting out of my car. "Denise, what in the world is going on? Are your mother and sister all right?" I didn't know how to answer that question, so I just nodded and walked quickly toward the house. Agent Torres met me at the front door, his expression serious but not unkind. "Miss Carter, you probably shouldn't be here right now. Is everything all right? We're executing a federal arrest warrant. Your sister is, not handling it well." From inside the house, I could hear Claire screaming, "This is harassment! I want my lawyer! You can't do this to me!" Mom appeared behind Agent Torres, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "Denise, thank God. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." Before I could respond, there was a crash from the living room, followed by more shouting. Agent Torres spoke quickly into his radio, then looked at me. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay outside." But as he turned to go back into the house, Claire's voice rose to a shriek. "Where is she? Where is my fucking sister? This is all her fault!" I heard heavy footsteps, and then Claire appeared in the doorway, her hands cuffed behind her back, flanked by 2 federal agents. Her hair was disheveled, her face red with rage and tears, and when she saw me standing on the front porch, something wild flashed in her eyes. "You!" She lunged toward me, only to be caught by the agents holding her arms. "You destroyed my life. Over a dog. Over a fucking dog." "Ma'am, you need to calm down," one of the agents said firmly.
But Claire wasn't done. "I should have used more poison. I should have made sure that stupid mutt died." The words poured out of her in a torrent of venom. "You chose him over your own family? You chose an animal over your own blood." The agents were guiding her toward their vehicle, but she kept twisting around to scream at me. "I hope you're happy, Denise. I hope it was worth it when you're all alone because no one in this family will ever forgive you." Mom was sobbing now, clinging to the doorframe. "Claire, stop talking. Don't say anything else." But Claire was beyond reason. As they reached the federal vehicle, she made one more attempt to break free, her face contorted with fury. 28 years! I put up with being the disappointment while you were the golden child for 28 years! And now you destroy me because I gave your precious dog a little time out? One of the agents opened the car door, and I watched my sister, the woman who had taught me to ride a bike, who had braided my hair for school pictures, who had shared a bedroom with me for 16 years, being placed in the back seat like a common criminal. The neighbors were openly staring now, some of them recording with their phones. Mom noticed them too and let out a fresh wail of humiliation. "Look what you've done," she said, turning on me with a viciousness I'd rarely seen from her. "Look what you've done to this family, to our reputation, to our standing in this community." "Mom, Claire poisoned my dog with industrial chemicals." "It was a mistake. She made a mistake, and instead of handling it like family, you called the police. You called the FBI. You put your sister in handcuffs." Agent Torres reappeared at my elbow. "Miss Carter, I think you should leave now. Emotions are running high, and..." "She's not going anywhere." Mom stepped between us, her face fierce with maternal protectiveness. "She's going to fix this. She's going to call the prosecutor and tell them she lied." "Mrs. Carter," Agent Torres said patiently, "your daughter didn't lie. We have the toxicology report, we have your other daughter's confession, and we have physical evidence from her home and workplace. This case is going forward regardless of what Miss Carter says or doesn't say." Mom's face crumpled as the reality of the situation finally penetrated her denial. "But she's my baby! Claire is my baby, and you're taking her away!" I looked at this woman who had raised me, who had taught me to say please and thank you and always put family first. She was 58 years old, standing in her front yard in her bathrobe, crying because her older daughter was being arrested for a federal crime. And her concern wasn't for justice, or for Max, or even for understanding why Claire had done something so cruel. Her only concern was protecting Claire from consequences. "Mom," I said quietly, "Claire is 34 years old. She's not your baby anymore. She's a woman who made a choice to poison an innocent animal, and now she has to face what comes next." "How can you be so cold?" Mom's voice was broken, defeated. "How can you do this to your own sister?" I looked down the street where the federal vehicle was pulling away, taking Claire to whatever came next. I thought about Max lying in that veterinary clinic, slowly recovering from poison that could have killed him. I thought about the other animals Agent Torres had mentioned, 12 other cases linked to the same illegal chemicals Claire had used. I'm not doing anything to Claire. I'm just not protecting her from what she did to herself. Mom stared at me for a long moment, her face cycling through grief and anger and something that looked like bewilderment. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold and final. "If you don't find a way to fix this, Denise, you're no daughter of mine." The words should have hurt more than they did. Instead, they felt like the last chain falling away. "Then I guess I'm not your daughter," I said, and walked back to my car. As I drove away, I could see Mom still standing in her driveway, surrounded by neighbors and flashing lights, the perfect suburban facade she'd spent decades building crumbling around her. For the first time since this all started, I felt something that might have been peace. The messages started before I even got home. My phone buzzed constantly during the drive, a steady stream of texts and voicemails from relatives I hadn't heard from in months, all of them wanting to share their opinions about what I'd done to Claire. "Aunt Linda, how could you do this to your own family over a dog?" Cousin Michelle, "Claire made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. This is extreme." Uncle Bog, "Your mother is devastated. I hope you can live with yourself." Cousin Sarah, "Family is supposed to stick together. You've broken your mother's heart." By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had 17 new voicemails and 43 text messages. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at my phone, feeling the collective weight of my family's disapproval pressing down on me like a physical force. Then I turned off the phone and went inside. My house felt different somehow. Quieter, emptier without Max's presence. I walked through the rooms where he usually greeted me, tail wagging, ready for his evening walk or dinner or just some attention. The silence was oppressive. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the spot where Max's food bowls usually sat. Dr. Lawson said he could probably come home tomorrow, but even that felt surreal. Everything felt surreal. My landline rang. I had forgotten I even had one until that moment. The caller ID showed my mother's number. "Denise, pick up. I know you're there." Mom's voice came through the answering machine speaker, tight with exhaustion and anger. "We need to talk about how you're going to fix this." I didn't pick up. The machine beeped, and almost immediately the phone rang again. "Denise, this is ridiculous. Answer the phone." Another beep, another ring. This pattern continued for 20 minutes, Mom calling, leaving increasingly frustrated messages, calling again. Finally, she switched tactics. "Denise, I just spoke to Claire's lawyer. He says if you're willing to testify that you might have been mistaken about what you saw, that you were emotional and not thinking clearly, it could help with her sentencing. She could get probation instead of prison time." I stared at the answering machine, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. "The lawyer says federal judges sometimes take victim impact statements into account, especially in cases involving family members. You could write a letter asking for leniency. You could explain that Claire wasn't herself, that she's been under stress since her divorce." Beep. Ring. "Denise, your sister could go to prison for 5 years. 5 years! Do you understand what that means for her children, for her future? All because you couldn't handle a family problem privately." I got up and unplugged the phone. The next morning, I drove to the veterinary clinic early before the worst of the family barrage could start again. Max was sitting up in his kennel, his tail wagging weakly when he saw me. Dr. Lawson met me in the treatment room with better news than I dared hope for.
His blood work looks much better, she said, checking his chart. Liver and kidney function are returning to normal. I think we can send him home this afternoon. Max leaned into my touch as I scratched behind his ears, his eyes brighter and more alert than they had been since this whole nightmare started. How much permanent damage? I asked. Honestly, I think he's going to make a full recovery. Dogs are remarkably resilient, and you got him here fast enough. She paused, studying Max's face. He's lucky to have someone who fought for him. As if he understood, Max pressed his head against my hand and made a soft sound that was almost like purring. Dr. Lawson, can I ask you something? Do you think I did the right thing? Calling the police, I mean? She looked at me with the same serious expression she'd worn when delivering Max's toxicology results. Miss Carter, in 15 years of veterinary practice, I've seen a lot of animal cruelty cases. Most of them get swept under the rug because families don't want to deal with the consequences. What your sister did could have killed Max, and based on what the federal agents told me, it was part of a larger pattern of criminal behavior. She sat down across from me, her voice gentle but firm. You didn't just save Max's life by getting him here quickly. You potentially saved other animals by reporting what happened. That takes courage. It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I destroyed my family. You didn't destroy anything. You refused to participate in covering up a crime. She gestured toward Max, who was now resting his chin on my lap. Look at him. Look at this innocent creature who depends on humans for everything. Food, shelter, safety, medical care. Your sister violated that trust in the cruelest way possible, and your family wanted you to pretend it didn't happen. I thought about Claire's words as they put them in the federal vehicle. I should have used more poison. No remorse, no acknowledgement of what she'd done to Max, just anger that she'd been caught and punished. My mother says Claire's children are going to suffer because of what I did. Claire's children are going to suffer because of what Claire did, Dr. Lawson corrected. She chose to steal restricted chemicals from her workplace. She chose to poison your dog. She chose to commit a federal crime. Those were her choices, not yours. That afternoon, I brought Max home. He was still moving slowly, still tiring easily, but he was alive and alert and home. I set up a comfortable bed for him in the living room and sat beside him as he slept, my hand resting on his chest to feel the steady rhythm of his breathing. My cell phone, which I'd finally turned back on, showed 87 new messages. I deleted them all without reading them. The house phone rang twice that evening, Mom again, but I didn't answer. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock at my front door. Through the peephole, I could see my Aunt Linda and Cousin Michelle standing on my porch. I didn't answer that either. They knocked for several minutes, then Linda called through the door. "Denise, we know you're in there. We just want to talk. We want to help you understand what this is doing to the family." Max lifted his head at the sound of voices. His ears perked forward. I stroked his head and whispered, "It's okay, boy. We don't have to let them in." Eventually, they gave up and left. That night, I sat on my couch with Max's head in my lap, both of us watching mindless television and just being grateful to be together. For the first time in days, I felt something approaching contentment. My family was angry with me. My extended family thought I was cruel and vindictive. My mother had essentially disowned me. But Max was alive. Max was going to recover fully. And somewhere out there, other animals were safer because the illegal pesticide distribution ring had been shut down. I looked down at Max, whose golden eyes were fixed on my face with that expression of absolute trust and love that only dogs can manage. "Just you and me now, buddy," I whispered. His tail wagged against the couch cushion, and I realized that might be more than enough. 6 months later, I sat in the federal courthouse downtown, wearing my best Navy suit and trying to calm my nerves as I waited to testify. The building was imposing, all marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. Claire sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made her look younger and more vulnerable than she actually was. She hadn't looked at me once since I'd entered the courtroom. Mom sat in the front row behind the defense table, flanked by Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her expression carefully arranged to project dignity and maternal suffering. She'd been playing this role for months, the devoted mother standing by her wrongfully accused daughter. Agent Torres nodded at me from the prosecutor's table as I took my seat in the gallery. Over the past 6 months, he'd kept me updated on the case as it developed. Claire had pled not guilty to all charges, despite the overwhelming evidence against her. Her lawyer was arguing that she'd made a tragic mistake, born of stress and mental health issues, not criminal intent. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Sarah Chen, had explained to me that federal judges don't typically show much sympathy for defendants who steal restricted chemicals, regardless of their personal circumstances. The court will now hear testimony from Denise Carter, Judge Williams announced. I walked to the witness stand on unsteady legs, my hand shaking slightly as I placed it on the Bible to be sworn in. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, but it felt enormous when I looked out at the faces staring at me. Miss Carter, Prosecutor Chen began, please tell the court about the events of March 15th. I took a breath and began. I came home from work that evening around 6 o'clock. My dog Max was fine, happy, playful, normal. I fed him his dinner at 6:30, the same food he'd been eating for months. About 5 minutes later, he collapsed. As I recounted finding Max unconscious, rushing him to the emergency vet, receiving the toxicology results, my voice grew steadier. These were facts. This is what had happened. And when you confronted your family about the poisoning, what did your sister tell you? She admitted that she had given Max something to calm him down because she thought he was too hyperactive. She said she'd used a chemical she had access to through her workplace. Claire's lawyer objected several times, but Judge Williams allowed most of my testimony. When Prosecutor Chen was finished, Claire's lawyer, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle manner, stood for cross-examination. Miss Carter, isn't it true that you and your sister have had a difficult relationship for many years? We've had our differences.
Your sister felt that you prioritized your dog over your family relationships, didn't she? I looked at Claire for the first time since entering the courtroom. She was staring at the table, her jaw clenched, her hands folded tightly in her lap. My sister was jealous of the attention I gave to Max, yes. And when she made what she has acknowledged was a serious error in judgment, you immediately involved law enforcement rather than trying to resolve this within the family. The question hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of expectation from Mom's section of the courtroom. This was my chance to minimize what had happened, to paint Claire as a woman who'd made a mistake, rather than a criminal who'd committed a felony. I called 911 because my dog had been poisoned with an industrial chemical that could have killed him, I said clearly. When someone commits a crime, even a family member, the appropriate response is to report it to authorities. But you knew that reporting this would likely result in your sister facing federal charges. I knew that my sister had committed a serious crime and that other people needed to be protected from her having access to dangerous chemicals. The lawyer looked frustrated. He'd clearly hoped I would express regret or uncertainty about my decision to report Claire. After my testimony, Mom took the stand. She wore a black dress and spoke in a soft, trembling voice about Claire's difficult divorce, her struggles as a single mother, her history of depression and anxiety. Claire would never intentionally hurt an animal, Mom said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She loves animals. She's had pets her whole life. What happened that day was a moment of poor judgment during an incredibly stressful time in her life. Prosecutor Chen's cross-examination was brief and devastating. Mrs. Carter, are you aware that your daughter stole restricted chemicals from her workplace on multiple occasions? I
she says it was only the one time. Are you aware that the chemical she used to poison her sister's dog has been linked to 12 other animal poisoning cases? I don't know anything about that. Are you aware that your daughter showed no remorse when she was arrested and in fact stated that she wished she had used more poison? Mom's composed facade cracked slightly. She was upset. She didn't mean that. Mrs. Carter, when you learned that your daughter had poisoned an animal with an industrial chemical, your immediate response was to try to cover it up, wasn't it? I wanted to handle it privately, within the family. You wanted to prevent your daughter from facing consequences for committing a felony. Objection, Claire's lawyer called, but the damage was done. The final testimony came from Dr. Lawson, who explained Max's condition when I'd brought him in, the toxicology results, and the seriousness of carbofuran poisoning. She was calm, professional, and devastating in her clinical assessment of how close Max had come to death. During closing arguments, Claire's lawyer painted a picture of a woman overwhelmed by life circumstances who'd made a terrible mistake. Prosecutor Chen methodically laid out the evidence of deliberate criminal behavior, theft of restricted chemicals, and complete lack of remorse. Judge Williams took less than an hour to reach a verdict. The defendant is guilty on all counts, he announced. The evidence clearly shows deliberate criminal behavior, not a momentary lapse in judgment. The theft of restricted chemicals poses a danger to public safety, and the deliberate poisoning of an animal represents a serious crime regardless of the defendant's personal circumstances. Claire's face went white. Mom let out a sob from the gallery. The defendant is sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation, Judge Williams continued. She is also ordered to pay restitution for veterinary expenses and is permanently barred from working in any capacity that involves access to restricted chemicals. As the bailiff led Claire away in handcuffs, she finally looked at me. Her eyes were filled with rage, not remorse. Even now, facing prison, she blamed me for the consequences of her own actions. Mom stood as Claire disappeared through a side door, her face twisted with grief and fury. She turned to look at me across the courtroom, and I saw in her expression the final death of whatever relationship we'd once had. "I hope you're satisfied," she said loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. "I hope destroying your sister was worth it."
But as I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete peace with my decision. Max was waiting for me at home, healthy and happy and completely recovered from his ordeal. Justice had been served. Other animals were safer because Claire would never again have access to dangerous chemicals. My family was broken, perhaps permanently. But some things, I'd learned, were more important than family loyalty. Sometimes love meant letting consequences fall where they belonged. 1 year later, I watched Max chase a tennis ball across our new backyard, his golden coat gleaming in the morning sun. He's fully recovered, stronger than ever, really. We both are. Mom never speaks to me anymore. The extended family has written me off as the one who destroyed Claire. But sitting here on my porch with my coffee, watching Max play with pure joy, I realize I didn't destroy anything. I chose love over loyalty. I chose truth over family peace. I chose to protect the innocent. Max drops the ball at my feet, tail wagging, eyes bright with unconditional trust. He's taught me what real family looks like. Not blood relations who demand silence about cruelty, but the bonds we choose, the love we fight for, the loyalty we earn through protection and care. Claire has 2 more years in prison. I sleep peacefully every night. Some choices break families. The right choices break the right families. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.